Hello everyone, my name is Osoro, Chief Air Traffic Control Officer in charge of Training and Standards, KCAA Headquarters. With me,
my name is Thomas Ogembo Ogonda, Senior Air Traffic Controller based in Jomo Kenyatta International Airport.
Welcome viewers to the 10th episode of Ask Your Aviator series. Today we'll be talking about air traffic management, focusing on air traffic services. Air traffic service is a service that is provided by air traffic controllers, and it includes air traffic control service, flight information service, and alerting service. Air traffic control service is further divided into sections. We have aerodrome control service, we have approach control service, and area control service. Under area control service, we have procedural area control, and we also have area radar service that are being provided. And we also have another arm that is called a Flight Information Center, which provides mainly flight information service. For the aerodrome control service, they provide advice and instructions to aircraft that are operating around the airport. That is, aircraft that are on ground, taxiing or moving around the airport, aircraft that are coming in to land, and aircraft that are preparing to depart for the flight. So they are responsible for flights that they are able to see, that is within the vicinity of the aerodrome. And that is why you find that all control towers where aerodrome control is done are done in a room which is mainly built using glass, so that they are able to see outside and be able to see the aircraft and where they are operating. When we go to approach control service, both a procedural and approach radar, they provide advice and instructions to aircraft that are arriving and departing from one or more aerodromes, depending on where the approach position is. And for the approach radar, they provide the service using radar equipment. But for the procedural, they provide the service using navigation aids, and just by knowing the position of an aircraft from the estimates that the pilots give, and from that position of the aircraft, we are able to separate them from each other so that we are able to prevent collisions between the aircraft. From approach control service, we go to area control service, which is also both procedural control and by use of radar equipment. They take care of the whole airspace, that is the Kenyan airspace. We call it the Kenyan FIR. They are responsible for that. They take care of traffic that are operating within the whole airspace, except for the areas that are under approach control service, which we are going to see that we have those services in several airports. So apart from the delegated airspace that is under approach, area control service takes care of aircraft that are flying within the whole Kenyan airspace. Then we move to the types of flights that we have. We have flights that are flying under visual instrument rules, what we call VFR, and we also have flights that are flying under instrument flight rules. We commonly say IFR. So for the visual flight rules, or aircraft that are operating under visual flight rules, those aircraft, we do provide advice and instructions, but mainly they operate their flights by looking out and following the geographical features, for example, the railway line, the roads, and they are supposed to know the positions of the other aircraft. They are supposed to look out. We simply say it is see and be seen. So they see the other aircraft, and they are also supposed to be seen by the other aircraft. So that's what we call visual flight rules. And for the instrument flight rules, the aircraft are required, or the pilots are required to fly the aircraft by using instruments that are in the aircraft, and also with reference to navigation aids that we have on ground. And so next we move to the objectives of air traffic services. Why do we have air traffic services? Our main objective is safety. So we try to prevent collisions between aircraft that are flying within our airspace, flights that are in the air. We give advice, we give instructions so that we are able to separate them from one another so that they don't meet. Our objective number 2 is to ensure that when aircraft are operating on ground, which we call the maneuvering area, that is when they are moving on ground towards the runway, we ensure that they do not collide with any other aircraft also on the ground or with obstructions of vehicles. There are so many vehicles, there are so many people that operate on ground in an airport. So our objective for that is to ensure that these aircraft that are operating on ground do not collide with those vehicles or maintenance people that will be operating on the maneuvering area. Our third objective is to ensure an orderly flow and expedite traffic. We give an order or we give priority on which flight should go first. We give instructions on which flight should be ahead of the other one depending on their performances. And by making that orderly flow, we ensure that we are expeditious so that we don't delay any aircraft without any good reason for it. Our other objective is to provide advice and information which is useful and necessary for the safe and efficient conduct of flights. This information includes bad weather, which we all know is not conducive for flights. For example, if we have heavy rain at an airport, or sometimes we have thunderstorms and very low clouds that are not good for flights to operate within an airport. The other information that we include is when the runway is not available. A runway is a place where aircraft that are coming in to land or that are departing, they first of all roll along the runway, which is like a road, which has a beginning and an end. So if the runway is blocked or that road is blocked, then we need to advise the aircraft so that they can plan their next action, whether to divert to another area, another airport, or to stand by and wait for us to have the runway cleared. That is some of the information that we provide. We also provide information on failure of equipment, if our equipments are not working or equipment that are required by pilots to fly their aircraft. We do advise them that certain equipments are not working so that they can use alternatives and they can plan their flights well without the equipment that has failed. So that's our objective number 4. Our other objective is to notify appropriate organizations or agencies regarding an aircraft that may be in need of assistance, and we also assist those organizations when they are providing or giving the assistance to the aircraft that is in need. Some of these cases include when an aircraft is in an emergency, or maybe we have lost an aircraft from our radar systems and we are not in communication, so we are not sure where this aircraft is. So we involve the other agencies such as the Rescue Coordination Center, which is in charge of search and rescue services.
I'll explain something at why we need air traffic services. We need air traffic services in areas where, number one, we have different types of aircrafts that are operating within a given area. Different type of aircraft is where we talk about different aircraft with different speeds, different aircraft with different performances, just like vehicles on the road. We have different vehicles, the Mercedes-Benzes and the Toyotas and the Nissans performing differently. And here we need somebody to ensure that there is control on how they fly and where they fly to. The second one is the density of aircrafts within that area. Just having two aircrafts that having different performances, one is very fast and one is very slow, does not primarily require to have control. But when there are many and they are mixed around, then we need somebody to ensure that flow of traffic as one of our objectives is met. The third one is weather. weather conditions within the airspace changes a lot. That is, we have thunderstorms, we have clouds, left and right, the wind directions and speeds that differ from time to time. And when this happens, now we need somebody to explain to aircrafts this type of weathers, changes, weather conditions that are available at that area within that particular time, and that we need ATC to be around. The last one is the topography around. When we have hills and mountains around the airport, we have lakes around the area, then ATC is required to warn pilots on what they expect, especially when they are going to fly within a particular area, or when they are coming to land and when they are taking off.
Now that we have talked about the air traffic services, we need to know where we provide these services. Air traffic services are provided at various airports all over the country. The whole country is covered, so your safety is ensured whenever you are flying. We have the services being provided at Nairobi Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. We also provide these services at the Wilson Airport, which is also within Nairobi. We provide the services at Mombasa International Airport, Moi. We provide the services at Ukunda, also known as Diani Airport. We also have the ATS services in Malindi International Airport. The services are also provided at Wajir Airport. We have services at Lokichogyo Airport, Eldoret International Airport, and also Kisumu International Airport. So the whole airspace is covered, and the services are provided there by our controllers who are stationed at those areas. We also have services that are provided by the military, but those ones are within their airspaces. So basically our whole airspace is covered, and the public should be ensured that whenever they are flying, they are well taken care of.
When providing air traffic services, we need equipment to provide these services. And we have equipment on ground that ensures that these services provided by the ATS is done and done well. The first equipment I'll talk about is we have the radios. That's our main equipment. We say without a radio, a controller becomes a spectator. The radio here, we talk of, I talk to you and you talk to me. It's a two-way communication radio. The second equipment is the radar, or we call it the surveillance system. Surveillance system, I'll divide it into two, where we have the ground-based and the airborne equipment, where we have the satellites that bring information, and we have the ground-based, the radars on ground that also give us information to the position of the aircraft. All this ensures that our mandate or our objective of avoiding collision between aircrafts is met. The other one is the nav aids, navigation aids. The navigation aids, these are also two. We have airborne and the ground-based one. The ground-based, for example, we have a radio navigation aid that is based in Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, mainly for the aircraft to know which direction they are related to that particular navigation aid. And this is where, like my sister said some times back, that the pilots report their position. They report position related to this kind of navigation aids. After the flight, usually an aircraft have to come and land. And when they're coming to land, there's an equipment on ground that ensures the pilot is aligned to the center line of the runway. This equipment is called Instrument Landing System. We call it ILS. The instrument landing system, we have part of it that brings the pilot to the center line of the runway. The other part ensures that pilot is on that grade to come and land, that he is not high and is not below that path, so that even when the landing is done, it is done smoothly as possible.
So the service that we provide, we do not provide it on our own. We have other agencies that assist us in providing our service. We do a lot of coordination with other units. The first units that we coordinate with are the other ATS units within Kenya. So if we have a flight originating from Nairobi and going to Ukunda, we have to coordinate with Mombasa International Airport and also coordinate with Ukunda by giving them the flight plan of this aircraft. How is this aircraft going to fly? So they become aware of the flight. This flight is leaving Nairobi at this time. When do we expect this aircraft to come into our area of responsibility as Mombasa approach? When do we expect this aircraft to get into Ukunda? So we do that coordination. We pass information regarding this flight, and if the flight is originating from Lokichogio coming to Nairobi, Lokichogio coordinates with us. So we do a lot of coordination with ATS units within Kenya. We also have international flights originating from Kenya and going to areas outside Kenya. So we also do coordination with other ATS units internationally. For example, we do talk to Entebbe in Uganda, we talk to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, and all our neighbors around. So we coordinate with them and give them information on a flight that is heading to their area and any other information they could like to know about the flights. Remember, we also talked about sometimes an airspace or a runway could be blocked. We give this kind of information to our neighbors so that they can prepare the flights in good time, so that an aircraft does not depart Uganda to come to Nairobi when the runway in Nairobi is blocked. So we do coordinate a lot to ensure that our flights are efficient and they are also safe. We also coordinate with the Rescue Coordination Center, which is the unit responsible for search and rescue. This one comes in, as I said earlier, when we have an aircraft that is in need of help. This happens when an aircraft is in an emergency, or maybe an aircraft has crash landed, that is a landing that is not normal. It is not an accident per se. So once we have those crash landings or an aircraft is in an emergency, maybe the engine has failed, we do inform the Rescue Coordination Center so that they are ready and they prepare themselves to go and rescue for this aircraft. At times we do lose aircraft. It rarely happens, but it can happen. And when that happens also, we inform the Rescue Coordination Center so that they can prepare for the search. The other units that we coordinate with include the meteorological department, so that we get the weather conditions in our airspace and in a given aerodrome, so that this information is communicated to the aircraft in advance so that they can prepare their flights well. We coordinate with the military. They give us the information when they are doing their exercises, especially during the public holidays. They have to inform us because we have to close a certain airspace to enable them do their exercises without interruption. We also coordinate with the Kenya Airports Authority. They are the managers of the aerodrome or the airport. So we do coordinate with them in case there is anything that we require, or in case there is something that has happened within the airport, we need to inform them, and they also give us information on whatever is going on in the airport. We do not forget the port health. That's another unit that we coordinate with, especially now that we have COVID cases. If we have been informed by a flight, the pilot informs us that they have a case on board. Those are the people we inform first, the port health, so that they can attend to this patient and ensure that the patient is isolated and taken care of. There are other agencies that we coordinate with that include the customs and immigration. So those are some of the agencies that we do coordinate with so that our job is done efficiently and in an orderly way.
There's a time when we start our work. The time whereby we start to ensure that our objectives are met as ATS. Following filing of a flight plan by the pilot, which is an indication of how he is going to fly, or the intended flight. This flight plan is delivered to one of our units, or to every unit that is going to take care of this aircraft. That is tower control, approach control, and area control. The flight plan is the main important thing first. After filing that flight plan, the pilot will call control tower requesting to start his flight as per the filed flight plan. Having checked the airspace safety, depending on how this guy is going to fly, the approvals of the startups would be given, whereby later air traffic control clearance is given to the pilot. This is an authorization on how this pilot is going to fly within this particular airspace. And the pilot must fly as per those instructions for safety to be maintained. And then we have from tower, the taxi clearance is first given for this particular aircraft to taxi from point A, where it is parked, to the point whereby it is now ready for takeoff, using different routes within the airport until it is ready for takeoff. Then after that, it's given what I called the air traffic control clearance, which later the pilot receives what we call the takeoff clearance. The takeoff clearance is now the permission for that pilot to leave, to get onto the runway and take off. These clearances must be given with time limits, so that the calculations because as she told you, we do coordinations with other units. Tower cannot work as an isolated unit. It have to coordinate with approach control, and approach control will have to coordinate with area control center, where area control center now takes care of the whole airspace, is the one who checks who is where within the airspace, who is maintaining that level. And by the time this person gets airborne, will we have the required separation between these two aircrafts? Approach control will ensure by the time this guy is getting airborne and flying to the required level, he's going to pass through the flight levels of different other aircraft that are flying in that airspace. As he flies through these airspaces, are we having the required separation required? So all that is done with approach. Then approach will get to this aircraft, control it until a particular point, level or time, then later transfer this particular aircraft to area control center, of which area control center, if it is going out of our country, then until it reaches the borders of our country. That is where we in Kenya, as air traffic services, we end our services from that point, when it is now leaving the country, and we transfer the control and responsibility of this aircraft to a different unit outside our country. If it is going to Entebbe, Uganda, we transfer to Entebbe. Going to Ethiopia, we transfer to Addis. Going to Somali, we transfer to Mogadishu.
So what do you look forward to when you're coming to work?
I look forward for a safe environment, whereby every aircraft that will be under my control would land safely, depart safely, and fly safely to their destination given the conditions around. Even in bad weather, when you have everybody landing within the minimum given time, then that is very satisfying for every controller. Just how did you join KCAA?
I joined the KCAA as an air traffic controller a long time ago. I saw an advert in one of the newspapers, of which I applied. After a few weeks, I was called for an interview. I came and did an interview which is called an aptitude test, which is a very intense exam. It's actually an exam because you write down. It was a very intense exam which I did. And then afterwards, I was called to join an air traffic control course. On reporting to the East African School of Aviation, that is where air traffic control training takes place, I was told I had to undergo a medical examination first before I could be accepted to start my training. So I was taken to a certified aviation medical examiner who did all the required, and I was checked, and I was told that I'm healthy and good enough to start the training. So from there, that is how I underwent through my training for about 3 years in school, with some breaks to come to the airports and do on-job training. After the 3 years, that is when we reported to the stations now, different stations. I was lucky to be posted to the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, where I did my on-job training under a qualified controller for about 4 months. Then after doing my examinations, we do oral examinations. We have one that is called a mock board, which is done at the station so that they see whether you are ready to work at that particular station. And then the other one is called a rating board, which is conducted by the regulator just to confirm that whatever the station has said that you're ready to work, then you are ready to work. After that rating board, then I was given a license as an air traffic control officer, now qualified to perform my duties as an air traffic controller.
Today, if somebody wants to join ATCs, air traffic control service, or air traffic control, what are the requirements?
Okay, during our time, we used to join immediately after high school, but nowadays there is a requirement for one to have a degree from a recognized university, majoring in sciences. Then they are required to have done geography and physics in high school. So with those requirements, you do your application. Whenever there are vacancies, adverts will be put on the newspapers. So you do your application, and then if you are shortlisted, you have to undergo an aptitude test, which is a vigorous examination. It's a written examination which is done by an independent entity, and currently it's being handled by the Kenya Defence Forces. They're the ones who administer the aptitude test. And if you are found to be competent after the aptitude test, then you will be called upon to join the East African School of Aviation, where air traffic control training takes place. But before you start your training in the classroom, you have to undergo a medical examination. This is done by an approved aviation medical examiner, not just by any doctor. It has to be an approved aviation medical examiner who will check you and confirm that you are fit enough to become an air traffic controller. This medical examination that you do is redone after every 2 years. That is, if you become an air traffic controller, after every 2 years if you are under 40 years. But once you are 40 years old and above, then the medical examination is done once every year so that you can maintain your air traffic control license. It needs to be valid at all times for you to perform your duties as an air traffic controller. How is the training conducted?
Trainings are conducted first in East African School of Aviation. After being After you qualify and you've been picked to do air traffic control, we take you to School of Aviation for a particular period to get through different subjects or different units, preparing you for the field, what you require to do to help you do ATA traffic control. And then when you are in that School of Aviation, you must pass, and the pass mark has been raised to 70% minimum. So after you qualify School of Aviation, you are posted to different airports where these services are being provided to now go on the job training. That is, currently we have Mombasa and we have Jomo Kenyatta for the first training, which we call aerodrome control. Aerodrome control basically is control done by the tower person. So first you train there on job, then as she said before, you end up doing what we call the mock board, and then you go to the rating board, and if you qualify or certified by the regulator, then it is endorsed on your licenses as a rating and a validation, a valid person to do your services, that particular service in that particular station. In other words, if you qualify in Mombasa, you cannot just come and start working in Nairobi. So you have to come again and train here and do as required in Nairobi. You do the validation board, then you qualify, then you start working in Nairobi. Then the next level is approach control. But nowadays it is divided into, you can either go approach control or you go to the area control. But let me use myself an example. I started, after aerodrome, I went to approach control procedural. Then procedural, you train. After training, then you go back to the headquarters and you're certified again. And it is endorsed on your license as qualified to work in that particular position. Then if you need to go for any other position, any other level, sometimes you're taken back to the School of Aviation to train again. If you're doing area, you want to do area, taken to do area, then after area you come and train in the field, then you go back. It's going to School of Aviation, coming back, School of Aviation, coming back, until your ratings are, you've done to an extent that now you can work in positions that are required. But basically we start with aerodrome, then we can end up with area radar or approach radar.
Thank you, viewers, for joining us on this episode of Ask Your Aviator series. We hope you learned a lot. There is still more to learn. If you have any questions or need any clarifications, do reach out to us on our social media platforms. And remember,
for every flight, there is a controller in the background ensuring your safety. Till then,
kwaherini.